Hi, my name is Mike Bea with Bangert. In today's course, we're going to talk about configuring and using Sage Intacct bank feeds. So what we're going to do first is go through a little PowerPoint, couple slides, and then we're going to get in and go through subscribing, enabling, configuring, and going through how to actually use bank feeds in the system. So going through my slide, basically what we're going to do is just talk a little bit about bank feeds and what is a bank feed. Basically, it's a connection between Sage Intacct and your bank. Intacct's going to receive bank transactions, and you can also set up some matching rules that will allow you to match them to existing Sage Intacct transactions during reconciliation. Bank feeds can be used for both, your typical bank cash accounts, your checking accounts, and also credit card accounts that you want to use and reconcile through the system. The success depends on the following. In this section here, there's a lot of things that are going to determine if this is going to work or not. Basically, the type of bank you're trying to connect to. Most banks offer connections for commercials, but not retail accounts. So it depends on your bank type, but also depends on what type of security methods that bank has in place, and if they support bank feeds in general and they have a connection available. You definitely should contact your bank directly ahead of time to ask them if they do have accessibility through a bank feed connection. This is not guaranteed to work. There's some banks, more national type banks, are going to work typically better than the around the corner mom and pop bank. You might find that connection isn't going to work for you. So it is dependent on a lot of things, and it's not always a guarantee. One of the big factors in deciding is if your bank uses multi-factor authorization codes, which most of them do these days. Right now, the only supported methods are either via a text message or a phone call. So when we first go in to set up and connect that bank, if you have the multi-factor, the bank's going to want to send a text message or a phone call during that time. So you're going to want to be ready to have that information handy and have your phone ready when you're setting that up. But the fobs and things like that do not work at this time. The good news is bank feeds are included in your subscription. We'll talk about that in a second. But basically, you can enable up to 200 bank accounts for no additional charge. So go ahead and use it. If above 200 bank accounts, there is an additional fee, but I'm assuming most of us are going to be under 200 bank accounts. Some of the setup requirements we're going to go through now, and then we'll go in and actually do it. So basically, as far as the setup requirements are concerned, you need to have a subscription to cash management, which pretty much everyone gets. And you have to be subscribed to Sage Cloud Services, and we'll go ahead next and show you how to do that. In order to set this up, you do need to have a user that is a business user and has administrative privileges, either full or limited, to set this up as well. And then, so basically what we're going to do next is go through these following configuration steps. We need to make sure that ISO country codes are enabled. We'll go through and show you where that is in the company settings. We need to subscribe to Sage Cloud Services. That is included. It's going to kind of give you a warning that, hey, this might include additional charges. It will not. And then we need to go through and assign permissions to these new areas in your system for the roles that for users that are going to be using this function. So we want to make sure that they have the rights to get into bank feeds and match and sync and all that good stuff. And then we'll go in and actually connect an account to a bank feed. I have a demo account we can use so you can see how it'll work. And we'll talk a little bit about, there's an optional setup called financial institution. And what this is used for is if you have multiple accounts that are all handled under one login. So if you only have to log into one site and it handles multiple bank accounts, what you can do is set up financial institutions, and then you can assign those to multiple accounts in Intacct, and then it'll require you to only have one login. Okay, so that's there as well if you need that. Okay, so let's go into the product now. And I'm going to go into my instance here. And let's go through and get this configured and check those items out that we need. So the first item we need to make sure of is that the ISO country codes are enabled. That's going to be at top level under Applications, Company, Setup, and then you're going to go back under Configuration Company. This is one of the first things that was set up in the Intacct system. It's right at the top, so you don't even need to go into edit. You should see it right here under general information. You'll notice down here, there's a use ISO country codes, and that is already checked off. And that's what you need to make sure is checked off. If it's not, you can click edit. You can come back over to here. You can check it off. You can click save, and you'll be good to go. Okay. The next thing we need to do is we need to enable the subscription for Sage Cloud Services. So we need to go back into Company at the top level, and you want to do this the first time at the top level. You go to Company, Admin, and under Admin, you're going to see a subscription section. And in here, there's going to be a bunch of stuff that you either have subscribed or not, but you're going to scroll down. It's near the bottom, and you're looking for Sage Cloud Services. And there it is right there. And you'll notice here, mine is already enabled. If you have a gray button, you need to slide that over. Okay. And then you're going to get a message like this. By subscribing to this application, you might be charged additional fees. Go ahead and click subscribe. You will not be charged as long as you're under the 200 bank accounts in the system. So once you have that slid as enabled, it does take a few minutes to finish the configuration. So what I usually recommend is before going in and going into the configuration button, go ahead and let's take a look and make sure we have the permissions set up for your roles, and then we'll come back into here and give it time to configure up. So from here, you don't have to hit save, just got that button slid over. And after you say subscribe, it'll go and do that process. But meanwhile, while we're waiting, let's go over to Company, Admin, and let's go and take a look at the roles. So what you want to do is any role that a user who's going to be doing these or managing these bank feeds, these bank transactions, you want to make sure they have security to do that. So I'm just going to go into the administrator role right now to show you. But basically, you would need to go to whatever roles you have assigned to users that are going to be able to do this task. So once you find the role or roles, you come over to the right and you click on subscriptions. And where you need to add the security to is under cash management. You'll click on permissions. And you'll notice here, you're going to see bank transactions here, bank transaction rules, rule sets, anything bank transaction related. You want to give them proper security to at least view and list is going to be needed. And then, you could offer additional security like editing, deleting, manual matching, and so forth. Usually I try to keep security pretty loose and then tighten it up once you get a little comfortable with the system, you know where you want to turn it on and off. So you just want to make sure that those roles have that permission. And you'll click save when you're done. And then make sure when you get back to the main screen here that you click save again. And once you do that, the permissions should be good to go. So at that point, you can go back into subscriptions and keep checking. But basically, you'll know it's done when you can go back into here. And under Sage Cloud Services, when I click configure, you're going to see a status at the top here. And if it says subscribed, it's all set. You're good to go. Actually, there is another. Let me see if I can find the other type. To find that, there's another pending status that will show it to you if it hasn't been subscribed yet. Oh, in progress. So it'll either say status equals subscribed or status equals in progress. Okay. Now, the other thing you can do for reference, for assistance is get into the cloud services and go into the help and support and help on this page. The help here does a great job in going through the complete configuration of the bank feeds. So I can click on bank feeds here and I can get a whole quick reference, about, connect, frequently asked questions, videos, all of that. It's very, very good. So if you need any refreshers after this class, definitely go in and check out the help on the bank feeds. Okay, so the configuration of the Sage Cloud Services will show subscribe when it's ready to go. And then what you can do here is you want to make sure under enable functionality that you have Enable Bank Feeds checked off. You do not need to enable bank file payments. This is for international banks. So, this lesson is covering US banks, and eventually Canadian, but right now we're on the US bank feed setup. So you just need to use Enable Bank Feeds. And what's nice is the first time you do this at the top level, it'll automatically include any entity that you have already set up. So if you have bank accounts for multiple entities or companies in the system already, those will all be enabled for you to use bank feeds for. Now, after you do this and save this, if you set up a new company or new entity next week or whatnot, it will not be added to this list. If you want to use bank feeds for that new entity and the bank account associated with that entity, you need to actually come back into here, but do it at the entity level. So for example, let's say TCG is a new entity I just set up. I would slide down into the entity TCG, and then I would come into company subscriptions, and you'll still have the ability by entity to say Sage Cloud Services. You would enable that. That would not show as enabled at this level. So then you would come in and then it would show up and add to the system. Okay. So for now, we're staying at the top level. We have all our entities set up. So if I go back into configuration again one more time, enable bank feeds, you'll see here a list of entities, and then you'll see a list of accounts that, either are going to be connected or are capable of being connected. So you can kind of see here, there's 2 that are waiting, but they're not connected yet. In addition, there's more helps. You can click on the little help question mark here. It'll talk to you about what we talked about the entities, and also about connecting to a bank feed. And here's how you do it. And you can get right to the link from here as to how you follow the steps. Okay, so once we're configured, we're done with that. We'll click Save. And we're going on to the next step, which if I'm looking back at my configuration steps, the next step was to actually go and connect accounts to a bank feed. So at the top level, let's go over to Company, Cash Management, and depending on what type of account you're looking to activate, you'd either select your checking, your credit cards. I'm going to go into checking, and you'll notice I have 2 bank accounts set up here. I'm going to click on Edit. So you click on your existing bank account. If you don't have your bank account set up yet, you'll need to do that first. And once you're in that bank account, you're going to see a tab called Banking Cloud. This is not going to show up until that enable and that subscription is configured that we saw in the previous step. So if you go into your bank account and you do not see Banking Cloud as a tab, that means you haven't subscribed yet to Sage Cloud Services. Once you do that, subscribed, it's going to show here under Banking Cloud. And again, there's some more help here as well. Read this before you connect. So they give you kind of the same spiel that we talked about initially. Hey, you might have some issues with some banks, and here's available connections, restrictions, find your bank, that type of stuff. You can look it up ahead of time here. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to click Connect. Now, this is where you're going to go ahead and find your bank. So if you're using a larger bank or a national type bank, you can choose from a list here, Bank of America, Chase, so forth. If you're using a bank like, for example, KeyBank, if I start typing it in, it's going to find me my KeyBank login. So you want to find your URL that you typically log in to your bank online. And you can also cut and paste that in there as well. So once you find your bank account, you click on it, and it's going to basically give you a little recap of what you need to do. You need to have sign-in credentials. You're going to be, and this is an important thing to keep in mind, this just came up the other day, you're going to be required to periodically re-sign up to your account. So, just a note, after your bank feeds are set up, it's going to be your responsibility to keep an eye on that account and make sure that it's syncing and it's active. There might be a status that's set up that basically says, hey, you need to reconnect. So it'll look like your bank transactions aren't coming in. You just need to re-log in, and then they'll come in. We'll talk about that. Okay. And then you'll need to review the terms and conditions. You'll click continue. And now it's going to pop up and ask you for your login criteria. And a lot of times there's a third-party connector here. So in this case, this one's using KeyBank's using Plaid to connect. So it'll pop up that, and I would click continue. And then I would log in and put in my username and password that I normally would key into for that bank account. Now, we're not going to do that here. I'm going to get out. And at this point, I'm going to use a demo company. So I'm going to come into here and click connect. Do not use this demo company for your live bank accounts. If you do want to use a demo bank account, set up a phony bank account in your system or in your sandbox as well. But if I type in Sage Demo, you'll see I get a Sage Demo Bank. So I can click on that, follow the same process, click continue. In this case, it's saying, hey, look, this is just to provide you a sample. Normally, a username and login would pop up here. Do you want to continue? And for this demo, we're going to say yes. So you can go ahead and see how this works. We'll click continue. And there's two methods you can use. You can use, now again, this is for the demo here, but you can just connect to your bank directly. We can also show how we do multi-factor authentication. So if I did that one, it would ask me for my phone number, to text me and things like that. So we're just going to do the demo bank on top here. We'll say select account and continue. And then basically, what date do you want to start downloading transactions from? Best practices is they recommend downloading date from the previous 30 days from the latest reconciliation that you did. So let's assume that our last reconciliation we did was August 31st. So let's do July 31st. Okay. And we'll click continue. And now the system will go through and connect. And basically, it'll bring you back to this main banking cloud screen. So you'll notice there's a status bar here, and it's important to know what these statuses are and keep an eye on it. So here's where you really want to, keep an eye on your status. And if you go back into your list of your bank accounts, you can have this field show up on your main bank account list so you can report on it. But what's the status options here? You can see it by clicking on the question mark. So I can click on the question mark here, and you'll notice it's saying, all right, you got pending, you got confirm, learn more about bank feed statuses. So if I click on that, that's going to show me all the different statuses and what they mean. So, if you see a status you're not familiar with, read through this here. Pending confirmation, we need to confirm. Authorization required. This is where you'll see this pop up from time to time if they're requiring you to log back in again, okay? Or they're verifying it, so it might take a day or so. Connected is what we really want to see. And maybe there was an interruption, something like that. So there's just different statuses here, and you can look at these in this status list. So we're pending confirmation, which means they're waiting for us to confirm before they do anything. Okay, so we're going to come over to here and click confirm. And now you'll notice that bank is connected. So if I wanted to, I could disconnect it. I could edit my login information if that changes. And one of the things you don't want to do is disconnect. So one of the things we'll talk about next is if there is an issue with that bank account, you're not getting transactions, hey, I'm just going to disconnect and log back in again. Well, what that does is any transactions that did get downloaded already when you disconnect aren't going to be sent back over to you. So you shouldn't disconnect. If there's issues with transactions or you get a status that says, waiting authorization or error, click the refresh button. Okay. So it's basically saying over here, it'll keep track of the last bank feed. The system's going to run these bank feeds every 4 hours for you. So if I want to refresh at any time, I can click refresh here, and it's going to go and tell you when last refresh date was. Okay. So try refreshing again. And we just did it basically is what they're saying. Try refreshing again at this time. So we're in good shape. If the bank says connected, we should have a bank feed. So if I want to see that bank feed information, I can see it a couple different ways. I can go back to my bank account list. Let's hit cancel here. Make sure you click save. Okay, I should have mentioned that to you. Make sure you click save. And now you'll notice, and this is where I mentioned there actually is, if you manage your views here, you can actually get your bank feed status as an option here. Some people like that because they can view it a little bit easier. But if I want to see my bank transactions, I can see it right from this checking account list. I can click on bank transactions right here. That opens it up, and there is my transactions if I have any. And it doesn't look like I have any transactions on this. And I'm going to say all and all. And I don't have anything yet. Last bank feed, last reconcile. So this is still setting up, but this is where your transactions will show up here in the system. And basically that's all there is to it, besides the fact of, if I need to connect to a financial institution. So for example, in my setup here on this bank account, you notice there's no financial institution here. So let's say if I go back, you'll notice I have two bank accounts. I have WF and WF2. I both log in, and it's only one login, and I see both of them. What you can do here is you can come over to Cash Management Setup, and you can click on Financial Institutions. I set one up earlier. Bank account, I just called it number 1, and I can select an account. To this financial institution. So what you can do is then you have to come over to your financial here, bank account here. Let me just pull this up and link it to that financial institution. So if I click Banking Cloud here, and I think I need to connect to my other account, so I apologize for that. Let's go into here. And I don't have a financial institution link there as well. It's because I didn't connect yet. Sorry about that. So what happened is I would connect to my demo bank. I don't know if I can show you this because I don't have the same login. Let's see if that'll work. We'll just say, let's try this one earlier. Maybe there was some more. Let's confirm that account. And we'll have to wait a little bit on that as well. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to show you that, but it would ask me for the financial institution. But again, you can use the help on that, to get more information on it. So let's do this. Let's let this generate in a little bit. I'm gonna look at this quickly to see if there is any transactions in there yet. It is demo data, so I don't know what date I have to select this as of. There we go. So looks like we got some transactions now in here. So these are your bank feed transactions that happened in the system. So we successfully connected to our bank, and there's our transactions that are in the system. So let's take a look at that original one and see if that now is in there. Yep, there they are. Okay, so sometimes it just takes a little bit to connect. Again, that time frame is going to depend on your bank. So, don't panic. Just be patient, wait for it, and take it from there. And let's go to our next screen. So some other things to consider, and we just talked about this briefly. When did transactions appear? They appear on the business day after they post at the bank. So, if you see a transaction that's posted today on 9/8, you're not going to see it in your bank feed today. At the earliest, you're going to see it tomorrow. It'll say 9/8, but it won't show up in Intacct till the next day. And in some cases, that's 1 to 3 days after they appear online. So basically, it depends how often this syncs. It really depends on the bank and what service they're using and all of that information. So you need to be a little bit patient on that, but it will come through. And again, we talked about this before. Do not disconnect. If it takes longer for transactions, don't disconnect. Refresh the feed. If you're seeing a partial success or fail, refresh the feed. And if you're noticing that there's transactions that have been posted in the bank account, online in the bank account, and it's 5 days out, it's 4 days out, and it's still not an Intacct, well, that's when you need to notify us directly at help@bangertinc.com. And at that point, we put a case in and they troubleshoot it, but they will not troubleshoot it if it's under 3 days. So it's just normal process. So if it is over 3 days, we can definitely help. And sometimes they'll connect in with the banks and see what's going on and be able to fix any issues that might be happening. So some of the other things you can do, you can set up matching rules and a rule set. So basically, you might have transactions that you're putting in through Sage Intacct naturally, and you're doing a bank rec, and those checks have cleared or ACH files have cleared through the system. You don't want to manually do that. You can have matching rules apply so that the system will automatically reconcile those transactions for you. We'll go in and show you how you can set up some matching rules. And then we mentioned already about the new entity after the fact to do that. So if I go back into my system, you'll notice that under cash management, and if I go over to setup, you'll notice you have reconciliation rules here. So what you can do is you can set up matching rules, and you can get as simple or as complex as you want here. I set up a simple rule called amount and date. So you can click add here, but if I just click edit, you'll notice basically I can assign an ID and a name. I can filter, so I can say, only do matching rules on these types of transactions in Intacct, maybe just AP checks or payroll transactions. You could filter out what applies to the rule, but I left it blank. I'm going to do a simple rule, and I'm just going to create matching conditions. So I have 2 matching conditions here. I have if the amount from the bank equals the amount from Intacct and the posting date equals the posting date, then match it, okay? Any condition that you have in this set here has to be true. So it's not an or, it's not a 50%. This is 100% of all conditions here, or I'm not going to match it for you. Now, keeping in mind, you can match transactions manually during the reconciliation portion. This is just to automatically match them for you. So you have options from the bank, document number, posting date, description, and then from the Intacct, same type of thing. So you can establish these matching rules. And if you go into the help here, it does a good thing about giving you examples. So you can actually get into here and click right on matching rule examples, and it will take you right into, okay, well, here's the most simple one, transaction date and amount. Here's some other examples. Target only debit, match one to many, many to one. So there's a lot of different ways you can expand on this in the system. Okay, so then what happens is if I go back into my bank transactions, and I can get to that again from right within the bank account, or I can go to bank transactions right here, and I can click on that, and you'll see my bank account ID. So I could filter, and I could have a view for each bank account if I want to. But you can see here that these transactions will give you a reconciliation status, and it shows that they're unmatched. I don't know if I have any that are matched, but let's see. No, I don't think so. Oops, sorry about that. But what I can do here is you can come into bank transactions, and I can click select. I could view that transaction in detail, and I can actually go back again. I don't know that I can do this here. What you can do here is you can ignore the transaction. So if it's something that you've already taken care of somewhere else, you can ignore it. And then you can also stop ignoring it as well. Let me take a look. I think we need to do this through here. Yes. Okay. So when you're matching, you need to actually be in under the account to do that. Doing it here really is just more of a view and allows you to ignore. But if you want to do matching, you need to actually go into the account that in question. So I would come into my checking account here and say bank transactions here. And once I do that, it'll show me all my transactions. You can filter on them. You can filter by check dates, but basically I can come into here and I can match it manually. And if you notice, what it does now is it comes in and says, all right, well, here's all your transactions that are in Intacct. Which one do you want to match? I would check it off, and then I would hit match. Now it's not going to work because it's not the same amount, but you can do that. So you can match it manually. The other thing you can do is if you have a bank transaction here that happened maybe automatically, and you want to create an Intacct transaction for it, you have this action button here. And if you click action, it gives you the ability to turn it into something. You can ignore it. You could turn it into a funds transfer, a journal entry, a manual payment. So, hey, we paid a bill. So I'm going to click manual payment. And for that line, it then pops up and says, all right, who did you pay? You paid this vendor. There's the amount. There's the check number. And then you can code the expense and make it payable, basically a payable entry right there. So that function's very powerful. You could turn it into here and make a fund transfer, journal entry. If it's credit card, you can also do it, flip it over and match it to an expense as well. Okay. And then once you match it, then you can match it to your bank rec, and then it'll show a reconciled transaction already in the system. So that basically takes us through managing bank feeds in Intacct, and basically go ahead and get this configured, enabled, and connected in your system, and then go from there. You'll be able to use your bank feeds to help you with your month-end closings and your reconciliations. And then, as always, if there's any questions or you need some further help or some reporting, feel free to reach out to us at help@bangertinc.com. Join a Q&A we have, regular Q&As on Tuesdays and Fridays. Join a Q&A, and let's get this working for you. And if you have any questions or comments, like and subscribe to us, all that good stuff. And we'll see you in the next class. Thank you very much.